Hello and welcome to Tar Heel Teachers at Home. I'm Marlo Artist. I'm the moderator of the program. Tar Heel Teachers at Home is an interview series focused on engaging North Carolinians in conversations around education. Each week, I'm happily joined by a wonderful panel of educators, each one representing a particular subsection of education. We'll start our introductions with our elementary school co-host.
Hello, my name is Amy Tart, and I teach fourth grade ELA and social studies in Clinton City Schools, and you can follow me on Twitter at Cards for Scholars.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Santamour. I have been in education for 10 years now. 7 years of that was in elementary, and the last 3 has been in middle school. I currently serve as the intervention specialist at East Hope Middle School in Hope County Schools. And this is the first time I'm publicly saying this, but I was recently named the 2022 Burroughs Welcome Fund Sandhills Region Teacher of the Year.
Congratulations, Elizabeth.
Thank you
We're so happy
much
to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tom Hatch, and I am the principal of Terry Sanford High School here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I am in my 31st year and my 3rd school, all in secondary education. And you can follow me at Tom Hatch for UNC on Twitter.
Awesome. So glad to have you here, Tom.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Darlene Ryan. I am currently Assistant Superintendent for Elementary in the Durham Public Schools. I have spent over 30 years in education, have taught K through 12, and had several central office positions, and likewise very excited to be here this evening.
Awesome. So glad to have you here, Dr. Ryan. We really appreciate you joining us as a special guest co-host. For this episode of Tar Heel Teachers at Home, we are chatting with Representative Charles Graham, retired educator and business owner who represents District 47 in the North Carolina House. He is here to discuss a variety of current educational topics, including Leandro, the budget, and more. He is also a candidate for North Carolina's 9th Congressional District. Representative Graham, thank you so much for joining us here on Tar Heel Teachers at Home.
Thank you, Marlo. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I'm very pleased with the co-host you have here. I can kind of relate to each one of them in some kind of capacity as an educator. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
That's great. So while you're talking about that, can you actually provide us with an overview of your career in education? Because I know that you served in Robeson County as an educator. Tell us about some of the roles that you had before retiring, Representative Graham.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. Well, I am a retired educator. I've been an educator all my life, I think. But my career for 31 years was, and most of it in Robeson County as a special education teacher, working for those students who were, of course, needing an advocate and special teaching during my tenure as an educator. I was also an education administrator. I served in the county administrative office for 15 years as the director of special education. Prior to that, I attended school at Appalachian State, earned my master's degree, and enjoyed that year and a half at Appalachian. Got my undergraduate at University of North Carolina at Pembroke. I also attended Lehigh University back in the early 90s and worked on my advanced degree, also in special education with a focus on administration. So all of my career as an educator has been devoted to working for special needs students, and as an administrator working for and on behalf of our special education teachers, our psychologists, counselors, all those folks who were trying to make a difference in the lives of those children. That was and I'll be very honest with you. When I finished my degree at Pembroke, I never dreamed that I would be a teacher working with exceptional needs students. My goal was to work in education in some capacity, but also I coached. I was a high school basketball coach, high school football coach during my tenure, 15 years as a teacher as well. So I have thoroughly enjoyed my career, and now I'm serving in the General Assembly. I was elected in 2010. I began my service in 2011. I'm finishing up or in the middle of my 6th term in the General Assembly, and I've been honored to be able to serve in the General Assembly and work on various committees. One of the very special committees I serve on is education. And I've had the opportunity to be on that committee, and I've asked for that assignment for all of my 11 years in the General Assembly, because we all know how important education is and what it means to the folks and students and teachers and administrators and resource folks throughout this state. So I'm glad to be an educator. I'm more of an educator now. I'm a legislator.
That's great. That is really wonderful. Now, Representative Graham, what prompted you to actually pursue becoming a member of the General Assembly after you retired? What prompted you to make that decision?
Yeah, thank you. I retired in 2006 after 31 years in education. And after I did retire, I wanted to continue to be a public servant. And I decided the best way to be a public servant was to run for elected office. I ran in 2008, 2 years after I retired. Of course, I was not successful. And then in 2010, I ran again and I was successful. So I wanted to continue to be a public servant. I wanted to be a voice for our teachers in the General Assembly. I just didn't see enough voices in the General Assembly to be an advocate for our children and our educators. And I certainly, like I said earlier, I took a lot of pride as an educator, and I wanted to go into that capacity. And I didn't want to be a local politician. I wanted to be a state politician, because I felt like I could have a greater voice at the state level. So that's what motivated me, and I'm honored to be a member of the North Carolina General Assembly in the House.
That is great. And you actually said something, and after this question, I'm going to turn over to the co-host. You actually wrote that this was one of the better budget processes that you have been through in your time in the legislature. Can you tell us what was it about this particular budget process that was better than some of the rest for you?
Well, let me say, first of all, we had more money that I can remember in the history of our state. When we look at the federal dollars, the state dollars, and the budget surplus that we had, it was good to be able to be involved in the appropriations process. I'm not on the appropriations committee for education. I'm on the appropriation committee for justice and public safety, which we all know what that means to our state and to our citizens. But I was excited for a number of reasons. One was the amount of money we had to appropriate, and the budget process. I was real pleased to be a part of that process in the House. And coming down to the end, I was also appointed as a conferee. Of course, we have the House budget, we have the Senate budget, and when those two budgets are formulated, we vote on our budget in the House, the Senate votes on their budget, and of course, we appoint conferees to work out the differences between the two budgets. And of course, I was honored to be a conferee in that budget process. So that meant that I was able to work behind the scenes with the budget writers, with the appropriations chairs, to work out. And also, the governor had his priorities, and the three bodies, the Senate, the House, and the governor, as a part of that negotiation for several weeks, I was part of the process to work out the details of a final budget. So that's what was very exciting, because our House Democrats and the House Republicans worked behind closed doors to look at our differences on the House and the Senate side. And of course, we knew the governor had priorities, and we looked at everyone's priorities as conferees, and we were able to do some negotiation, which was not out in the public, but we all wanted to do what was best for our state and what we could, because we had three separate budget priorities. And as a conferee, I was able to work in that process. So that was very exciting, and it was a great opportunity to do that.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. What questions do we have for Representative Graham?
I'll go first. So I have a question that's not necessarily completely tied to education, but it certainly impacts it. So we have over 12,000 students that are in DSS custody, and those are kids that are in our school systems. What can we do to better support those students? And also, what can we do as a state to better improve the DSS system?
Well, that's a good question. I think you said 1,200 students in the custody of DSS?
12,000.
12,000. Wow.
Children, yes.
Yeah, that's a lot of children that's in the custody of a state agency. Well, let me say, first of all, I consider myself as an educator, but also a human resources kind of individual. One of the things that I didn't mention this, I was in Pennsylvania as I worked on my advanced degree in Pennsylvania, and many of the students, I worked with at Lehigh University in a laboratory school. And many of those students were actually wards of the state. Many were in, like you say, in the custody of the state, and also in foster homes, those kind of settings. But there's 12,000 students that are not with their natural parents. And I feel that, as an educator, as a human resources individual, we need to ensure that those children who are in the custody of our state, that they also are getting the attention they deserve and living in environments that are very supportive of their needs. One of the things that I think is very, very valuable for those children, and also in our school system, is to make sure that our schools are aware of those individual students and what their needs are, because their needs are unique and they're different. And I believe that one of the things that I advocated for a couple of years ago and a few years ago, when we were working on our budget previous to this budget, was to have more resources in schools for our children. And the resource that I consider very valuable are guidance counselors and social workers. And those students, obviously, because of their living situations, they need to have all the supports necessary for them to have a successful day at school, and those wraparound services that are needed, coming from whether it's a guidance counselor or a social worker. And also, and one of the things that I take a lot of pride in is looking at a complete ecological model. And what I mean by that is the child, the community, and the school working collaboratively to make sure those children's needs are being addressed. Because surely they are coming to school each day. Some of those children may be traumatized. Some of them may have issues that's ongoing with them. And as an educator and as a human resources individual myself, I just believe they have to have that extra touch, that extra level of support. Now, DSS, that's a huge bureaucracy. I think one of the things that we need to ensure that those folks who are case managers or case coordinators with those children are trained, they are knowledgeable. Not only that, they are advocates for the children. That's a great question, but there's a lot of different working pieces that go into supporting those children and making sure they're being successful. And our teachers certainly are teaching, but they have to wear different hats sometimes when it comes to the needs of those students as well, because they may have mental health issues, they may have behavioral issues, and a lot goes into trying to support those kids and making sure that they're being successful in our educational system. I don't know that I answered your question 100%.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much. Yes.
I know a lot's needed to support those students.
Of course.
Representative Graham, Tom Hatch, Cumberland County Schools. Thank you.
Let me say one thing. When I was a former coach, I lost a 1-point victory at Terry Sanford on a last-second shot. I'll never forget that.
Were you at our place or were we at your place?
I was got some of that home cooking, as they say.
Yeah, it can be hard to win sometimes in Bulldog country.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for taking up the torch and being a member of our legislature. As a longtime educator, I followed closely the Leandro case when I was doing master's studies Actually, some of my undergraduate work, even looking at this case and appropriate funding for all of the LEAs throughout our state. Help us understand some members of the legislature's inability to get behind this basically a Supreme Court decision that there needs to be equitable funding across all of our districts in the state of North Carolina.
Well, thank you for the question. That is a great question. First of all, let me say I support Leandro 100%. I come from a rural county here in Robeson County, and I can tell you there is a divide between the rural and urban counties in terms of resources. And I think the Leandro case certainly is timely, it's needed. And the judge had the foresight to say, okay, legislature, you need to meet your obligation in terms of the constitutional mandate that our children deserves an equitable and a fair education. So the Leandro, of course, that was one of the issues that we had during this budget session, and the governor and our conferees, we wanted more funding for Leandro. And to be honest with you, the leadership felt that they had other priorities, of course, and that's what I said earlier, the negotiation behind the doors. We talked about Leandro and more funding for Leandro quite a bit. And that was one of our priorities. It was obviously definitely one of the governor's priorities. And it was certainly, from my caucus, we wanted more funds obligated and allocated for exactly what you're asking for, is more resources for those counties who, for a number of reasons, don't have the revenue, and based on the tax base. And I can just talk from my county. We're not as fortunate as folks in Wake County. We're not as fortunate as those folks in Wilmington or Charlotte, or we're just not. The tax base is there, but the Leandro case is something that is needed. Of course, we all know about the ruling that the judge came down with, $1.7 billion additional funding to bring us up. That's just to bring us up, get us on an even keel with to have quality in all of our districts across the state. Of course, that was appealed, and the appellate court ruled against that, unfortunately. So, the Leandro decision is a good decision. It's one that I support, but to wrap my arms around why the members of the leadership in the House will not, well, I think I know, but I don't want to get into a lot of political debate here, will not meet our legislative requirements to support the Leandro decision is, it's unfair and it's unfortunate. But just let me say, the decision is a good decision. It's a political football. Let me just say that, and it's unfortunate for our students. When we look at the Constitution and the mandates from the Constitution, we know that a child here in my county, in Robeson County, does not have the same opportunity for a public education as a child in Wake County, and that's unfortunate. We're one state, one education system, and that's unfortunate.
Do you believe, and this is purely speculative, there's a general conversation among educators that really since 2010, that there has been this undercurrent in the General Assembly to basically piece by piece dismantle public education. And Leandro is one of those cases where it can in fact do the things that we know that needs to be done with equitable funding. So with those in certain majorities in the General Assembly are pushing back, and it's gone to the appellate. And then you get into vouchers and things of that nature. It's just disheartening as members of the educational community, public education, to see that our General Assembly expects so much, yet is not doing the things necessary to properly provide equitable funding. So, and again, I know this is really probably a loaded question to ask this, but I think my colleagues could probably agree that we believe that our General Assembly is not doing enough. I've got friends that live in South Carolina, literally a counselor and a teacher that relocated to Dorchester County. A school of 1,800 kids has 9 counselors.
Yes.
South Carolina and Virginia have us sandwiched, so to speak, and they are pulling great people from this state. And I just can't help but to think that this is some covert over time, sand by sand, drop by drop, that eventually it's all going to be privatized in some way.
Well, drip by drip. And I will say, when I went into the legislature in 2011, that's when that trend started. We abolished the cap on charter schools. There was a real big push, and it's been that way now for several sessions to promote virtual education, homeschooling, privatizing, and giving our tax dollars to private investors, private school owners, and it's just not. I agree with you. It's disheartening to see what's happened over the years, and this trend has been moving in that direction now for the past 10 years, as you said. I've sit there and I've watched it session after session, and it's really unfortunate. And I've said just recently to someone that public education is going to be an institution that's taking the cream of the crop out of our public system and paying for those students to go to private schools or charter schools. And our public education system is nowhere what it should be in terms of funding. And of course, Leandro is one of the reasons the judge stepped in, because he knows, and I think folks like yourself know, that public education is falling behind. And the thing that's so sad about this is that the charter schools, the private schools, the virtual schools, they pick and choose who they want to come in their classrooms. They pick and choose who they want to come to their facility. Public education, of course, we know we can't do that, but we take what we've got and we try to do the best with what we've got. And in addition to that, the legislatures continue to put. When I say the legislature, it's not Charles Graham. Let me just say that. Continues to put a variety of demands on our public educators, and it's just unfortunate and it's not fair. But I appreciate you asking that question, and it's a great question, and it's going to take some strong-willed and determined legislators to turn this thing around. And now I'll be honest with you, I have not seen that in the last several years. And I'm afraid for our hardworking teachers that the resources they're going to be getting will be dwindling. And one of the things that I've fought for and advocated for is more counselors, more social workers, more school psychologists, more resource officers in our public schools to make sure they're safe and to make sure our children are getting the resources they need to have an equitable education.
Representative Graham, I'd like to kind of follow up on a question that Mr. Hatch shared with you, and thinking about something that you said earlier about the budget process being one of the best that you'd seen in a while. I still have concern that our budget process goes well beyond when the budget should be approved, and what that does to school systems as they await the approval of a budget. And I want to kind of probe you a little bit about the budget holding value for the public educator. When we think about our teachers in the classroom, our principals in schools, salaries are huge in our recruiting. And you as a special education teacher many years, we have such great difficulty in recruiting special education teachers at this point, math teachers, science teachers, and a good portion of that is because our state has not valued the public school teacher. And so I just would like for you to speak a little bit about that, and how we're going to continue to maintain the high quality teacher in the classroom in order for children to receive exactly what you said, that they receive the instruction, the support, the social emotional learning, all of those things that it takes from a classroom teacher when we can't find classroom teachers, and the pandemic has hit that even harder for us.
Yes, and I thank you for that question. And I remember when I went into the General Assembly, one of the things that which I think was a good thing to do was to raise the starting salary for beginning teachers. I think that was a very good idea. But along that same line, we did not, and we've not really taken into consideration in terms of salaries, the value that our experienced teachers bring to the classroom and the values they bring into the teaching environment. You know, our young teachers need mentors, and who can be a better mentor than a teacher that's been in the classroom 10 to 15 years, and they have a wealth of knowledge and experience on how to mentor those young teachers. Along that same line is teachers, one of the things that I've advocated for has not happened. As a matter of fact, I've written legislation to bring back longevity pay. That was taken out about 6 years ago. I wrote a piece of legislation to bring that back. Of course, we know what happened to master's pay. You know, that was atrocious to not pay a teacher for wanting to go out and expand their knowledge and become a model teacher, as we say, a master teacher. So, you know, I think a lot of damage has been done by the leadership in the General Assembly to do exactly what you just stated: recruit teachers, retain teachers, to make sure that our students have a qualified teacher in every classroom. And we have, I'll be honest with you, the legislature has fallen short on that. And I've spoken on the floor had a many opportunity to speak on behalf of teachers, but I'm sorry to say that it fell on deaf ears, and that's so unfortunate. Now, can we make this up? We need to begin. We should have started this budget year. I say it was very exciting for me to be a part of the budget process, and it was, but teachers deserve more than a 2.5% pay raise. You know, that's something we fought for. We did not get that, but we took what we could get, and in hopes that we can do better in the short session. Now, our one of the things that I will say is our teachers will get a $1,000 bonus on top of the 2.5% or 5% raise over the next 2 years. But that's not enough. It's just not enough when we look at the demands of COVID, the constraints that teachers are under during this tough pandemic. But teachers deserve more, and I'll be the first to step up and say that, and don't mind saying it every chance I get. I will advocate for educators, because, you know, educators, you folks are on the front lines every day, and I know what you're confronted with. It's like I said earlier, our children in public education bring a lot of issues with them to school. I mean, it's not a cut and dry situation that our children, you know, the environments and different living situations they come from. We as educators, we have to wear many hats. And one of them is, you know, first of all, you're a teacher. Sometimes you may have to be a mental health case manager. Sometimes you may have to be a social worker. Sometimes you may need to be doing counseling with these students. but then you got the demands of achievement and those things. When you compound that in the run of a day or run of a school year, that's a tremendous challenge. So yeah, I agree with you. We need to do more for educators, and I think there has been, and we've missed an opportunity this budget year. I was not pleased with the pay raise. I would have liked to see more, and the governor wanted to see more, but it's what we had, and of course it's what we had to take at this particular time.
Representative Graham, I'm glad you're here, and it's very concerning to hear that your voice is a minority in our General Assembly. It's very concerning. This pandemic that continues to rage on is a major disruptor in all aspects of our society. And we can go on for hours of podcasts and Zoom calls about it. But I'm going to sort of whittle it down to one major factor, and I promise not to say another question.
That's okay.
So everyone acknowledged throughout the spring of 2020 through last year that there was a significant learning loss. Now, you can
Yes.
quantify and qualify learning loss however you see fit.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it through test scores, or can I literally count, formative, summative, diagnostic assessments, whatever. We gave EOCs last year, and of course our county they counted them, and there was a crazy curve and all of this goodness. I just administered biology, which 2 years ago they took the growth out because biology teachers were doing so well. They took the growth out, so just make it proficient. Again, a little drip drop in the bucket there. We're just going to dismantle public education. We're giving EOCs and to our elementary middle school folks, EOGs in the spring to kids. I've got freshmen who have basically a 7th grade education. Many of them in their 8th grade year, they got 40s and 50s for their final marks, yet they're sitting in high school taking high school regular classes and EOCs, either their freshman or their sophomore year, that they are in no way prepared to do well on. It baffles me that even DPI, and it may be that it's coming from the General Assembly because there's laws that mandate you will give, and that goes all the way back to the feds, which I understand there are federal mandates for funding that you have to give certain assessments. When does testing end? When do we finally begin to say that one day out of the school year does not show us what a teacher truly is not a teacher's report card or a school's report card or a kid's report card for that fact. Any word from the General Assembly on testing and accountability and changes that I know everybody thought it was great that we got rid of the North Carolina final exams, and it's a step in the right direction. But I'm just baffled that my kids are taking end of course exams with hardworking teachers this year, that those kids came to them with deficits and they still can't get them back to where they need to be.
Well, I wish I could go into a greater and deeper discussion about that. And of course, one of the issues that we've had debates and discussions in our education committee is when does testing end? When do you base a child's ability to go from grade to grade on a one-day performance test? But now we're in a different time. And like you just said, we've got children who's missed well over a year and a half of learning. And now you're going to have them sit and perform one day in the spring. It's unfortunate. I'm not an advocate for testing. I will tell you that right now, but and that's where I think we've kind of put the burden on teachers when we look at public education as compared to private education. There's a different standard in terms of formative evaluations. You're not comparing apples to apples, and there's no accountability in the private sector, and that's not right. That's not fair. And I agree with everything you're saying. And some of this is coming from DPI, but the legislature has a lot to bear on this as well. So, I would love to continue to have this dialogue, with teachers as we go forward, especially in the circumstances we're trying to be successful, with everything that you teachers are being confronted with and administrators. And it's very disappointing. But Thomas, I'm with you on that. It's a tough situation, and I wish I could give you a better answer, but it is not. It's something we've got to improve on that.
Hi, Representative Graham. So my question is
you're my neighbor, right? You're in Hope County.
Yes, exactly. And as you're speaking, even you going to Pennsylvania for school, I'm from Pennsylvania. So you kept just saying things that really I'm an EC teacher. So everything I'm like, literally like, I know this person inside.
Are you an EC teacher now?
I'm actually an intervention specialist through ESSER funding. Yeah, through ESSER funding, they created the role to kind of combat that learning loss. So it's a unique position. I'm able to pull kids from all classrooms, and it really, hopefully, is making that impact. Obviously, we're still early in the year. I could talk about the budget all day. Yes, I could talk
for what you do.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
I was at Lehigh University back in at a time when I was trying to get my advanced degree, working on my doctorate, but I was at a laboratory school, and that was just an intervention. It was one large lab school. It was nothing but a intervention for children who need to be. They needed more. They needed more than just a traditional education program. So you're to be commended for what you do. Intervention specialist. That's great.
Yes, thank you, sir. My question is in a completely different direction than what we've been discussing so far, but it's one that I really carry deeply in my heart. I want to talk a little bit about school safety. So as I'm sure you're well aware, recently we've really combated some social media scares and kind of things that are really impacting the schools. Last Friday, for the first time, I got to see a team search our students as they arrived on campus, and I hadn't experienced that yet in my career. And my daughter is a student at our high school as well, so I kind of had to talk to her from that perspective of why it was happening and how to kind of emotionally deal with that as well. So I would like to hear a little bit from you about where you stand on collaborating with law enforcement to really hold parents accountable and also bring down some stronger sentences for school violence and threats of school violence and those kind of things, because the emotional state of our kids right now, it is becoming a big issue.
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you. Well, first of all, let me say I've had the opportunity to serve on our Justice and Public Safety Committee, and we've appropriated funds for safe schools, obviously, but that's not just the answer. It goes deeper than saying, well, we're going to give you $10 million across the state for safe schools. What we need is more resources to address those issues that come to our schools. And of course, you're a resource person yourself, but we need, and I've advocated, especially for the last 3 budget cycles, is for more counselors who do what they are supposed to do as a counselor, and that is work with our students on a one-on-one basis and work with the parents of those children who may be a threat to the school environment. They may be a threat, to themselves. So I've advocated for that, and I wanted more funding and more. North Carolina does not meet the state's regulated ratio for school counselors. That's a no-no. We in this environment, we need to have the regulated amount of school counselors in every class, in every school. Social workers who can go out into the communities if we see a threat, if we know of a threat, if we know some child is in crisis, we need to be able to put those children in situations that can address that crisis. And we're missing that. We are missing that in a big way. School psychologists. I worked in Robeson County for 15 years as the director of special education. We were always short with school psychologists who just doing their regular routine of assessing students who were referred for special needs. So all those resources we desperately need, and we're like we talked about earlier, those resources we're still falling behind. We're falling short on those basic and fundamental resources that we need in every school in the state. Now, you know what? I don't think, this is my personal opinion, I don't know that we can legislate this, but if it can be, I think a local decision can be made. I don't think we should close our school doors at 3 o'clock. I think that, you know, the school is the community, is the center of many communities. I think those, in my opinion, those doors should stay open longer with the resources needed for those students who need something, something more, or something outside the box in terms of addressing their learning needs or addressing their mental health needs. I've always advocated for mental health and social services and DSS coming to the campus, and you know, that's where we have a captive audience. Our children are at school, and I'd love to see DSS come into the school environment to work along, develop a model for those individuals to work collaboratively. You know, I said earlier, an ecological model: the school, the community, and the parent and the child working together. I'd be glad to see the legislature finance some special models to bring those resources to the campus on a Monday through Friday basis, or 3 days a week, to address the needs of those students who are in that environment. You've got them there. I think you can probably get the parents there if you needed to handle some of those situations that you, as an intervention person, you know, your role is to get students to learn, right? But those students, and I was in a laboratory school in Pennsylvania, they can't learn if there's interference in the process of learning. They're not able to learn because they're overwhelmed with other things that's affecting their ability to process the information that's been given to them. So, you know, as a mental health professional, and I consider myself a mental health professional as well, there needs to be more resources. And I believe the school campus is where that can happen. And we're just, I think we're missing the boat on that. I think we're missing a great opportunity. I don't know if that answers your question, but we need to do more. We need to do more, not less, because, you know, when I was a teacher, you know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, things have changed tremendously. And the influences that are affecting our children now is greater, and it's being compounded. And you know, with social media, peer pressure, it's a tough environment. It really is. But I think there's a lot that can be done if we put the resources in the right place.
I so appreciate you doing all the work that you're doing to try to get us more resources. But one problem I'm seeing is that we just can't get the staff for these positions. You know, we are getting more money for psychologists and school counselors, but we're just not able to find those. So aside from, you know, upping salary, what can we do to bring more individuals into the school system to fill those roles?
Well, I think we have to start, you know, at an earlier time, and there's careers. I think students need to know that there's opportunity out there, and as an educator or a resource person, to have a career they can walk into when they complete their graduation. So I think we need to start, and we've had these discussions in our public safety meetings. We need correctional officers. There's a severe and a significant significant shortage of correction officers. So we need to offer incentives for those individuals who would, and we can identify those students in high school. We can identify those students who would be a good teacher. You know, the Teaching Fellows Program, I know y'all are familiar with that. You know, I think we've done in the legislature, I don't think we've promoted that and put funding out there enough to recruit teachers and to incentivize young people to go to UNC Pembroke here in Robeson County and get their teaching degree. So I think there should be a greater emphasis recruiting students while they're in high school to look at teaching as a career, look at counseling as a career, or being a school social worker as a career. I think we're missing the boat on that, and I think more incentives. We need to incentivize those students and young people to go into education, because we are. I agree with you. We're in great need of highly qualified teachers.
Representative Graham, part of the budget also included that Southside Ash Pole must return to the public schools of Robeson County. What are your thoughts about how all of that has been handled since you're right there in Robeson County?
I think it could have been handled better. You know, the innovative school district, which is what they were. I think the rollout during that period of time was not managed very well. I think there could have been a better rollout, and not only that, Marlo, why do we need innovative school districts? Why do we need those first and foremost? Why not put the money up front?
Innovative school district. And by the way, Robeson County was the only innovative school district in the state. And I was very disappointed with the rollout and how that all evolved. But as I said earlier, what should have happened, in my opinion, was we should have given the school the resources. They were in trouble. If they were a struggling school, which obviously they were, the state should have stepped in with more resources to help those teachers and help that community, help those children meet standards. That's what I would have preferred to see. But you know, of course, the innovative school district is something that I voted against. I will tell you that I didn't support that legislation, and the reason I didn't, I just think we should have done more for those struggling schools to for the state to support those schools in a better way.
Thank you for that. We appreciate it, and we'll continue to monitor what happens as Southside Ashpole makes that transition back to the public schools of Robeson County in the next year or two. So, Representative, our last question for you: why have you decided to run for North Carolina's 9th Congressional District, and what are your priorities as you make that transition to being a candidate on the national level?
Well, let me say I've had the pleasure to serve in the General Assembly. Now this is my 6th term. I decided back early in the year, actually in April, that I would like to pursue a higher office. And of course, I did that on after a lot of consideration. After the first of the year, we all know what happened at our nation's capital. We've heard and we've seen. You know, about the great divide that's happening in our country, and I wanted to use my experience to go on a stage with you know, and support a higher calling, and of course be a representative of at a national level for North Carolina. You know, the vision that I have is to continue the same priorities. You know, support our working families. Those kitchen table issues are very important. Support our communities, give our communities the resources they need to be economically successful, to help our families who are needing the level of supports they need to have a stronger and bring more value to our communities, Of course, infrastructure is very important to me in terms of our crumbling infrastructure across this country. And of course, I live here in Robeson County, one of the poorest counties in the country. I think we need a voice at the national level that can connect to what's happening at the grassroots level. My campaigns have always been working with a grassroots campaign, working for those families in the communities and supporting those efforts and those programs that our families need, our business communities need. I'm a business owner as well. And I decided back in April to take this step, working for those core values, the same that I've done in the legislature. And I believe I can be a voice and not only a voice, but a unifying voice that will work across party lines to try to bring prosperity to all people in this country. And that's what I'm about. I'm not about partisan politics. Charles Graham, I think I have a record in the General Assembly as being one of the most bipartisan members in the General Assembly. And I've worked that way, and I work that way because I know where I come from. I know the folks I represent, and I think they would want me to work that way, to do things across party lines that will bring prosperity to my county, and not only that to the state of North Carolina. So that's me, and that's what I've done, and I want to continue at that national level.
That's great. Well, we certainly wish you all the best as you
Thank
continue your political career and take it to another level. We appreciate you joining us for this conversation, and you have a welcome invitation
Marlo,
to come back on the show.
Let me say this, Marlo.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say this. I will always be an educator first, human resources individual, and that's the way I've conducted myself. I be honest with you, I don't consider myself a politician. I consider myself as a resource, and that's the way I operate.
That's great. Well,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
We've enjoyed chatting with you. We would like to also thank our audience so very much for watching our program. We hope that you will engage us on our social media platforms. Please like our Facebook page. Please follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @TarHillTeachers. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Visit our website, tarhillteachers.com, and on all of our social media platforms, please use our hashtag TarHillTeachers so we can find all your great comments. I'd like to thank our wonderful group of co-hosts for joining us for this conversation: Amy Tart, Elizabeth Santamour, Tom Hatch, and Dr. Darlene Ryan. Well, we'd like to thank our virtual audience so very much for joining us. And once again, we'd like to thank our special guest for joining us, Representative Charles Graham, who represents District 47 in the North Carolina House. He's also a candidate for North Carolina's 9th Congressional District. We look forward to seeing you next time on Tar Heel Teachers at Home.